Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Mercedes have given more insight into their car design and philosophy for 2024, suggesting that they have a different term than Rocket Beast internally, but nonetheless they believe next year's car will be a significant upgrade on the weaknesses of the W13 from this season. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Firstly, really cool new helmet design here for Checo Perez at his home Grand Prix in Mexico. Really cool stuff. Hopefully it works out well for him this weekend. Now, just to mention this quickly, because Nick De Vries will be driving in Russell's Mercedes in Mexico Grand Prix FP1 to complete the kind of necessary rookie driver practice sessions required, and I'm sure they want to give De Vries a nice send-off because he's going to go to AlphaTauri next year alongside Yuki Tsunoda, and well, pretty much the entire grid is now confirmed, apart from Hülkenberg, who we still believe is going to be stepping into the Haas seat instead of Mick Schumacher. The other piece of the puzzle here is the Williams seat. They have confirmed Logan Sargent is their man over rumours about Mick Schumacher and stuff there as well. But yes, Logan Sargent, their Formula 2 man, is going to be stepping in. American driver, exciting prospect, I think, for the sport. But it's not actually guaranteed he has the points yet. He needs to finish, well, he needs to just do well enough in Abu Dhabi. It's actually very unlikely, based on the way the points stand in Formula 2, that he doesn't make it in, because he needs all the drivers behind him to just have monster races, and he effectively needs to DNF. And look, it can happen. It's Formula 2. Reliability isn't great, but there's a good 95% chance, I think, that Logan Sargent does well enough to get the super license points he needs in Abu Dhabi and finishes where he needs to in the championship to therefore get locked in. And also, I believe Sargent's still going to do another couple of free practice runs, and if he clocks up 100 kilometers in free practice, then he gets another point on his super license to get him into Formula 1. So it's probably going to happen. They've also said that they don't actually know who the replacement will be, so if he doesn't get the points, then they'll decide, but they don't as yet have a backup plan for their driver if Sargent doesn't get the required qualifications. The Mexico Grand Prix, of course, this weekend. Perez doesn't want to be gifted the victory. It's an interesting question there, what you do. Let's say the Red Bull is by far the strongest car this weekend, as I think we would expect it to be for a few different reasons, and Verstappen's leading and Perez is a few seconds behind. What do you do at that point if you're Red Bull? Verstappen wants to break the record. He wants to get his 14th win and break the record for all-time race victories within a single season, breaking the joint record that's held between Vettel, I think, and Schumacher, maybe at 13. Verstappen can make that 14 this season if he wins one of the remaining 3 races. But still, what do you do if you're kind of Red Bull in that situation? You've already won the drivers, you already won the constructors. Do you say, look, Max, pull over to the side of the road, let Perez through for the win? Or, do you want to do that? Does that feel cheap if you're Perez, knowing your teammate gifted it to you? I don't know. He wants to win it on merit, I'm sure. But if it does get to lap 58 or whatever, or lap 70 odd or whatever it is around Mexico, and it's a clear 1-2 situation, would Red Bull have any words, or would they just let Verstappen win? And the crowds might not be so happy about it, but Perez got on the podium last year. That was a big celebration, but this year I'm sure is going to go for the victory. Quick comment on the cost cap, because we're expecting something on the cost cap relatively soon. They've taken a few days off this really due to the whole Dietrich Mateschitz situation when he passed away, unfortunately. But outside of that, they've still got to come up with the resolution on what the penalty is going to be for Red Bull. Now, Alfa Romeo have said that they reckon there should be a serious breach. Of course, all the teams are going to and are inclined to say look, they don't just want a fine, they want some serious sporting penalties, whether that's points deducted, or whether that's, reduction in testing time. That is the present rumour. Now, this is the situation as it stands. So this at the bottom here is the proportion of wind tunnel testing time allowances. So, relative to Red Bull, who are number 1, they get 100% of the time. I think in reality, they get 70% of the time, and the 100% number is given to a midfield team, but it kind of works out to be the same thing. And then Ferrari gets 7% more testing time, Mercedes get 14% more testing time. So quite significant upgrades really for the teams over the team in the front running. But the question is, could this number for Red Bull be reduced further? Let's say it was going down to 75%, which would be the kind of, I think that's pretty much the upper limit of what we might expect the FIA to do in terms of a wind tunnel penalty. That was the initial rumor we heard. So, it might go down from 100%, which should give Mercedes and Ferrari a quite significant advantage in terms of testing for the upcoming season. But, whether Red Bull can get the job done regardless. And of course, this also carries into the season after, right, in terms of development progress. The other teams just want to ensure that any advantage Red Bull might have gained is eliminated and potentially even gone further to force them to take a step back, just to ensure that no one tries to break the cost cap again in the future. Let's talk about Mercedes though, because of course in a couple of years they'll have potentially potentially a new German rival in Audi Sauber that will be partnering up in due course. That's a pretty exciting prospect. He says that Audi is on his radar in terms of a competitor. But let's talk about the W14 as well, because they talked in the kind of the Mercedes debrief video after Austin discussing the W14, and there were questions being raised and have been over the last couple of weeks. How good is next year's car going to be? Is it going to be a significant upgrade on all fronts? Like, can it compete with the Red Bull? Is it going to be an absolute rocket ship? And I think someone asks a question to say, is it going to be a rocket beast? And they say that internally they don't use that particular terminology, but effectively that is the way they talk about next year's car internally to at least some degree, suggesting that they're certainly aiming high with how good they think next year's car can be. And in fairness, this year's car with all the upgrades wasn't terrible compared to Red Bull and Ferrari as it stands now, but of course there are still some key weaknesses they are looking to address.
We had one final statement that I think it was the W14 is going to be a rocket beast. Probably different terminology internally, but completely we mirror your sentiment on this one. We're here to come back and fight for wins and for the championship next year. And the W14 has to be a step and will be a step over where we are now.
Still unclear really what they will do next season with regard to the side pod design, whether they double down, whether they go for a Red Bull style concept you can see here in the top sides. So yeah, really still unclear for now, but there have been some hints suggesting that they will keep the no side pod design, but there's other elements of the car that they need to work on for next season, which is expected in fairness, because when the new regulations come around, you would in fairness expect that one team is probably going to come out on top, as usually here is the case. Few things to mention on the Hamilton-Russell combo. I thought this was interesting because Russell, of course, is still ahead of Hamilton in the Drivers' World Championship by about 20 or so points. But in terms of qualifying over the last, I think, 11 rounds, it's Hamilton 10, Russell 1. So I think since Budapest, or even maybe including Budapest, that's really been the trend since they stopped all the experimentation. It was quite clear at the start of the season they were trying anything and everything on Hamilton's car to try and see if it would work. It didn't really work. And of course, there's questions going to be raised if Hamilton does lose to Russell in the drivers as, okay, wow, Hamilton's washed or whatever. I don't think that's the reality. And as he even says here, like, if he beats me, I don't care. We're fighting for 5th and 6th. Russell might finish 4th or whatever. That's a possibility. But still, it's not first, right? And he says, I thought it's a funny statement, really. It would be a different story when it came to 1st and 2nd place. So if we were really fighting for a championship, then Hamilton would certainly have the elbows out. We've seen that in the past. And hopefully there's a world in which we see it again with the 6-way fight for the victory next season between Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton, Russell, Sainz and Leclerc, and Chuck Norris and Alonso into the mix as well there. I mean, look, obviously wishful thinking, not going to happen, but it would be interesting to see if that was the eventuality, how spicy things might get, because we've seen Hamilton versus Rosberg in the past, and Russell is not kind of he's not a Bottas level driver, in my opinion, where he's going to be the clear number 2. Like, obviously Russell is there to prove his worth, and he's done that for the first part of the season, but since then Hamilton's kind of hit a new gear, I think, since the kind of effectively the experiments had stopped. And kind of similar story here, as he even talks about George Russell. I thought it was interesting that George is doing a great job. I have no problem with how he's doing. There are no problems between us. George and his team didn't experiment as much with the car as we did. That is normal. I've been there for a long time. I've known for 10 years how people tick, how to engage ideas with them. Chauvelin, that's Andrew Chauvelin, their kind of head guy, and I can argue about things, but argue constructively. George is new to the team and he does his job as best he can. He tries much less during setup. Thought interesting statements. It's not like he's roasting him or anything, but he's saying, look, he tries much less things during the setup stages. I'll try this or that, or change this suspension thing, try this new front wing, try and find out if it helps. If we hopefully have a better car next year, then we can focus again on getting the most out of the car instead of messing with crazy votes, right? So kind of saying that at least in the first part of the season, he was trying everything and anything to try and see if the car would work better, and didn't really help him, of course, with his overall performance. And then as the season has progressed, certainly in qualifying, he's definitely had the measure of Russell since the summer break and even marginally before. In race pace, he's also had the edge, but it's been, obviously, races can be, different stories in the races. Sometimes what happened in Spa, for example, could have been a very different story in the championship points if Spa went differently for Hamilton that weekend. So intrigued to your thoughts on all this in the comment section below. Do you think there's any reasonable chance the Mercedes car next year is significantly better? Will it come down to this wind tunnel testing time? To me, the possibility for them to fight for the the championship next year probably comes down to whether Red Bull get a penalty for the cost cap. If they don't get a significant wind tunnel testing time penalty, then I think their advantage will probably just be carried over and be potentially too great for anyone to handle. If they do get a significant penalty, then there's a chance that Ferrari and Mercedes could be in the mix. There's always a chance, of course, and it's not like, Mercedes have forgotten how to build a car in the last 12 months. But very much interested your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.